run a management organization or management school there in Karnataka and transformed it from being urban centric to rural centric. And the kind of changes that he made are really exemplary. So Dr. Prakash is a very unique personality. It's our great fortune that he has come to share his knowledge, his experience, his wisdom with all of us here. And I'm sure Ahmedabad, Gujarat, and India will be a better place with the involvement of Dr. Prakash. His subject is, as you know, very, very interesting, and he has got a lot of knowledge, experience, and personal, I would say, capability to kind of tell us what should be done to attain sustainability in the fields that he has talked about: food, nutrition, and health, through a combination of innovations, because innovations is very important. Then investments. I mean, you may have any idea. The scientist may have any idea. You can do anything in the lab, or you can do anything, say maybe on a pilot scale. But until and unless you are able to attract investments, until and unless you are able to attract entrepreneurs, until unless you are able to attract, you say, the businessmen, it cannot grow. Lab to market, that is something which is calling for investments. And then integrating, because integration is very important. We can go on analyzing, we can put the things in silos, but if we don't synthesize, and if we don't pick up the knowledge from the different streams and integrate it, deliver a solution, I think we would be probably not getting the returns. So here is Maharshi Dr. V. Prakash. I'm presenting him to you, and I'm sure next 1 hour to 1 hour 15 minutes will be very scintillating and very interesting for all of us. We are all waiting to learn from you, sir, and welcome to you. And before you start speaking, I would like to present a small bouquet, a small memento to you. Well, I think we have stopped now giving the there is yeah.
Well, a good evening to all of you, and what a great pleasure to be here in this hall, a very unique hall, which has seen much more learned people than myself. And I feel a great honor. I feel that energy down here. And I think whether it's the first row or the last row, everybody is better than my knowledge, has better than my knowledge here. So therefore, Mr. Monal Sarabhai, Mr. Dangyach, and many others, including Sunil Parekh, who is here. We have sat in many committees and many areas, and all my friends and colleagues of science. First of all, I want to give you a very good news that I will not have any slides. So therefore, I have the opportunity to keep seeing you, and you can see me. Otherwise, you will be seeing there and not me. So therefore, that's a part of the good news I have for you. But at the same time, I also am grateful to AMA for inviting me down here. And myself and Unmesh Dixit, we talked quite a bit, many times, what day would be convenient. So finally I said I need to expose myself to above 40 degrees, because coming from Mysore, I'm a very spoiled child, but not being exposed to more than 30 degrees. But so this year, Mysore went to 41 degrees centigrade before I left Mysore. So I feel Ahmedabad is still cooler than Mysore at this point of time. So therefore, I don't have to talk about climate change too much, but certainly I will address that point also, how things are changing and how we can combat that change with a very, very different tools that we have today. With that, I just felt, thanks for Mr. Dangyach for introducing me. with all superlative words, and whether I deserve it not. But one thing that always that misses in my curriculum vitae somewhere, it goes in some corner, is that I'm a teacher too. So therefore, coming to IIM area, both the old campus and the new campus, and also the AMA here, I'm a teacher, but more importantly, is a student forever in my life. So today I'm here to learn more from you after my very brief talk, and learn rather than answer questions too much, because you are more learned than in your own field than myself. So at this point of time, I would say we are in the right climate, and in this right climate, whether we are going to expect others to do things or what we can do to others, I think is more important at this point of time. And how do we give knowledge? I was just talking to Anil in the small room we met over a cup of tea now, that India is a unique time. The largest number of experienced people who are being asked to go home at the age of 60 or 65, and the largest number of youngsters. A combination of these two is fantastic. Is fantastic. And I don't think we will have a time, because the same what you call senior citizens, about 60, right? Yeah, you get a card, senior citizen. But some of them don't look like 60 or 70. They still are energetic, they're loaded with energy, and importantly, I think they are the ones who have touched a Remington typewriter, typing their theses, and they've also touched the latest iPhone in sending messages. This generation will be lost very soon. So you will not find them the same finger touching the Remington, hitting it very forcibly so that the sixth carbon copy comes very, very dark. Otherwise, your thesis won't be accepted. And unfortunately, the sixth copy is the student's copy. And all other copies goes to university and so on. So therefore, this is amazing that how this transformation without training, by adapting and adaptability, signatures of some of us, have been a great, great time. And I think thanks to all the technology that is in front of us, but to learn it without, if you ask your grandchildren, I say, you don't know even that much? I'm sorry, I thought you were a smart grandfather. So you ask your children, it's too late, Dad. I think you should relax. So, left to yourself, you are going to learn by yourself as self training. And sometimes it's better. Sometimes. So, this is the unique opportunity of India. Telling that, I would like to closely guard myself by not overemphasizing anything politically, because this is the wrong time, because election commission may question me what I'm telling. But at the same time, we need to realize that we are in a great time, because many dreams of people have been realized of late as a powerful India. And I think you mentioned just now, Mr. Sarabhai, about the Nature article, which in the morning I read that. And it's such a power of science which India is carrying on its shoulders. And many people, many countries may not like that, but that's the truth. That's the truth. And today, whether you take from agriculture to aerospace, we have made our indelible mark, which is going to be a process again every 5 years. And that indelible ink comes from Mysore. So we are proud of that. It comes from Mysore. And therefore, it is vital when we look at agriculture to aerospace, what exactly we are talking about, our role in today's situation of the world, what we are seeing. From womb to war, from womb to tomb, there is so much of things that are happening. I don't think in a short time of 40 minutes or so, I'd be able to cover all of it. But there is one responsibility that every Indian has promised the United Nations, and that is the Sustainable Development Goals. And none of us probably know it even, But India is the signatory along with many other countries, that we will deliver by 2030. And I and you may be delivering, but we don't even put a tick mark. We don't even put a tick mark where we have delivered. But finally, the report will go. And we have achieved so many things. So I want to tell you, there are 17 goals which we have to achieve with a signatory that a part of it, 2030. Out of these 17 goals, which quickly I will say, no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy. Number 7. Number 8, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequality, sustainable cities and communities, very important, responsible consumption and production. So I think that's a very important one, of responsible consumption. And I would even add sustainable consumption and also the production. Climate action, life below water, life on land, and 16 is peace, justice, and strong institutions. Of course, IAM demonstrates one of them. Partnership for the goals. And at the end of my talk, I'll be adding the 18th one, which if I had something to do with United Nations, I would have added it. But it's too late. I'm only a follower and not a policy maker at that level. All these 17 goals, one way or the other, we are involved, and the nation is involved, the nation is building. So it's very easy to say, but the question is, there are some very strong sustainable development goals. The question is whether we will be able to achieve it or not. Of course, many times the FAO and WHO puts goals, and when it's not achievable, shift the goal by another 10 years. What does it matter? Shift the goals. So 2015 goal goes to 2020, 2020 goes 25, 30, 35, 40. And therefore, poverty, for example, cannot be just removed from here all of a sudden. And what is poverty? And how many people have without food? And so on and so forth is a very debatable question. And today, on paper, very difficult to demonstrate and record that somebody died of hunger. You cannot demonstrate that the person died of hunger, because he dies finally with some infectious diseases because of lack of immunity, and so he declared as tuberculosis, as immune syndrome, and so on and so forth. So therefore, these sustainable development goals have put us in such a situation where each day, I think we need a bigger plan for ourselves to contribute, both as individuals, as families, as communities, as societal systems, in a larger way of a city or a village, all the way down to the country and state, with a clear, inclusive approach and an adaptable move to make sure we contribute. But how does our contribute get recognition? There will be no recognition, because ultimately a person who has built a great airport has contributed to that, right? He is a worker, he has contributed, but his name is never etched on the airport, in the airport. So therefore, everybody has contributed, but at the same time, we need to keep that respect in the world, that India did not achieve this, India did not achieve that. We have a very bad situation. But have we overcommitted ourselves? We don't know at this point. So therefore, it is important that every 5 years, when we look at progressive growth, and that growth has to come with a clear mandate of answering SDGs, good for the country, and some strategy of external policies with internal inclusiveness, and good for all in a sense of economic, mobility and economic stability. Therefore, when I selected sustainable management of food, nutrition, and health, I use the word sustainable with this in background, that if we can really look at these 17 goals, when we talk about food, out of these 17, 13 goals are related to food. And therefore, my interest in whether homeopathy or Ayurveda, or Unani, or Ayush, or allopathy stems from all those, conglomeration of linkages of food. So therefore, when we look at 13 goals can be partially achieved by a proper management of food, it interests me more. Nutrition is seven of these subjects in Sustainable Development Goal has nutrition loaded in it. Has nutrition loaded in it. And therefore, when you talk about health, health is not self. Health is the environment, the plants, the animals, the fungi, the bacteria, the single cell organisms, including the COVID organism, has to survive in this world. You can't make it vanish. You can't make that virus vanish. It survives, it mutates, it regenerates itself into a new species and tries to do. So, therefore, how does this sustainable system affect the overall health of the universe? Here, the health that I'm using is not just for the human health, but the animal health, the plant health, and water, below the water. There's an SDG for below the water organisms and species. So, therefore, above the earth, and below the oceans, and above the top of the mountains, we are looking at fungi and so on, which vanishes at 50 degrees centigrade, from which land Dangaj comes. And he said yesterday that 50 is his upper limit, because he's grown in that land of 50 degrees centigrade. So therefore, some of the plants may not even survive for 1 minute at that temperature, because their species gets vanished, not one plant. So are we accountable for that? How are we accountable? How does nature calibrate it? This is the first time this is happening, and so on and so forth. So therefore, when we look at this charter, there are so many things of regulatory in the nature, not only regulations of the country in terms of food, medicine, and many other things, but at the same time, mitigating problems and human and animal health has to come into the fore to make sure that the ecosystem speaks about this global environment in a clear pathway, in a clear language of orchestrated symphony rather than individual music. Because individual musicians can be always great to hear, but together as a chorus, we have a problem. And that together chorus is what we are talking about for sustainability in health. These can be really looked at by many approaches. And therefore, what I will do is quickly go through how we can really manage in terms of the entire contents of this topic for innovative movements, investment charters, and integrated approach. And when we look at this, it's very easy to talk, but to implement each one of them is not easy at all. When we talk about chemistry as a subject, very few people say, basically a chemistry background person. So I'm not talking because I'm a chemistry background. Any of these systems in nature and what humans have really put in forward, whether it is iPhone all the way to a chalk piece that you write on the board, has chemistry in it, fundamental chemistry. So if the chemistry is wrong, we say many times, then people won't gel. There's so much truth in that, so much truth in that. Without chemistry, it's very difficult to attack any scientific program, including the structures that we build. It is cement, it is iron. These are all chemistry background. So chemistry has to really gel well. And in that, I think there is so much of integration that has happened over a period of time. When we talk about food, we all realize that the United Nations and India begging for food in the 60s, in the early 60s and the late 50s by Krishna Menon and C. Subramaniam, the then food minister. US and UN said it's not possible to give you food like this forever. You had to go back and grow your own food. You can imagine the insult that created a real furor. And I think many times that insult is necessary to trigger and ignite a system. And today, with MS Swaminathan and ICR and so many others contributing, today we are self-sufficient except in oil seeds, which we import a lot to produce our edible oil, which we consume more than we should consume. And therefore, it is very important that self-sufficiency, whether it is dairy industry, fruits and vegetables, cereals, fisheries, and also to a large extent spices, and all this together, maybe 5 or 6 areas, we are either number one or two. And this is just impossible to believe. One or two, number one or two in quantity production. Even though our productivity per acre or per acre of the water that we use is much lesser. But the total quantity is supremely high. For 22 plus years, we are number one in milk. And today, as of 2024, we are running at 225 million tons per year of milk. And Mr. Varghese Kurian created a model which is local consumption, local production in a small area of 50 kilometers. What can be better than that for a carbon footprint of the best milk with the minimum most carbon footprint in the world? And we don't sterilize milk, we pasteurize milk. By evening, whatever milk is left over, converted to a nice homely made curds in those houses which can afford that extra milk. Otherwise, there's always a shortage. So therefore, just a model that started with an engineer to look at a business model which is sustainable with women-centric approach so that the men don't get the evening expenditure of liquid, which is another type of liquid. So the women completely get the cash in handling. And today they are handled through bank. So therefore, India and food in the 50s, starving, 60s, problems of different kinds, 70s, we started the touch of green revolution. In the 80s, MS Swaminathan and green, evergreen revolution started. And Varghese Kurian in 1985 made a classic change in the whole approach of dairy industry. Of course, it is centric here. So we are very proud of this one fact that Gujarat cooperatives, in a way, completely changed the outlook of dairy industry in the world. Dairy industry looked at totally differently. And in that, 95, we had Grey Revolution, number one, which is nothing but fisheries. And 2000, Rainbow Revolution with the fruits and vegetables. And also in 2010, food and health aspect got much more concentration. 2020, COVID put the nutrition into a picture. Many people didn't even know the word nutrition, but they came and started talking about immunity and nutrition. Eat that, your immunity will grow up, and so on. So it became a common slogan, common word for with everybody. And 2025, by next year, we are talking about sustainable food systems to feed the entire world. So India is a net exporter and no more a net importer. But there are times when many questions have come. We import wheat from some other country, but still we are self-sufficient. How are you saying that? So I think it's an economics there, and many of you are economists here who would understand that you can't transport the 620 wheat mills in India, in the South India, getting wheat from north. The price of diesel doesn't allow you to transport that. It's much cheaper to buy from Australia and supply to the southern Indian mills rather than transporting that. And if that is exported, then your balance of incoming export and so on. So therefore, many times these are questions that are raised in various forums, including the parliament. Why are we importing? So that if you really transport that all the way to Trivandrum from north, that wheat is 3 times more costlier. So you can't really, just because you grow as a big country, you have transportation of 2,000 kilometers, not that easy at all. So therefore, it is wise to grow more, be surplus, and export. And if there is a nearby country which can sell at a cheaper price, buy from it and make sure that that is palatable, that is possible to make good chapatis, good rotis with it. Very important to remember that. It may be suited for bread, but not for the local traditional food. India is loaded with a tradition. India is loaded with indigenous food. India is loaded with heritage food. And India is loaded with a huge epidemiological background of more than 11,000 traditional foods that spread all around India, and each region eats its own different kinds of food where the wheat has to really fit in. So therefore, we can't get a wheat that doesn't gel with our food. And these are all parameters that need to be looked at it. Therefore, when India's leadership looks at these things, all these things have a background of what we call as food culture. Because food culture is never discussed. All other cultures are many times discussed, but food culture are never discussed. So, what is this food culture about? This food culture has to do more with the way you grow a crop, with the way you harvest, the way you preserve it for a long time, maybe 6 months to 1 year till the next crop, and at the same time, using traditional means which has less carbon footprint, at the same time, making sure the local materials are used, and at the same time, look at the nutritional angle of it and also the combinatorial food that can go into a dish and which also becomes a sustainable system. Therefore, when we look at all this culture of food culture, right from Chanakya's Arthashastra 2000 years back and Sushruta Samhita, these are all Samhitas, Granthas, and treaties which have come through various experiences. We only say Charaka Samhita is 2000 years old, but I would say it is 6,000 years old of knowledge, old knowledge. I write a PhD thesis and today I submit. It doesn't become today's date. 5 years of struggling hard with my guide to work and produce the thesis is not easy. And therefore, the submission date is only remembered. Charaka submitted 2000 years back, but he emphasized the summary of that knowledge that was transmitted not by books but by generations of memory and recall, and documented it luckily. And today we are happy we have that for many of the Ayurvedic medicine, and which is one of the fatherly systems of medicines, which talks about better health through food-based approach. Therefore, food is thy medicine is something that I agree. But the many Europeans believe in the second sentence, which was impinged on us with the imperialistic rule that medicine is thy food. I think very rarely it can happen unless you are in ICU. Otherwise, food is thy medicine is a good formula for the time being with the food culture that we have, with an enormous amount of the documents that we have, like Bhava Prakasha, Madhava, about 14th century, and Aharadikaranam, a very old treatise of 1800 years back, Bhojana Kutuhalam, and Kshema Aharam. If you look at these treaties, it takes more than a life to understand. It takes more than a life to. The preparation of ghee from butter is an arduous process, which we think you melt the butter, give a flavor to it till it cooks, water is out, filter it, and that's your ghee. That's not ghee at all. So therefore, when you look at the process material, how do you really cook a material? Each one is so well described to preserve the nutrition, preserve the flavor, and give that aroma at a particular time you need to add. So therefore, these are all documented, but at the same time, we also have a tremendous focus that we need to give on food and eating habits. In that food culture, the eating habit has to be really practices that are sustainable, that has come over a period of time. And generally, we treat our mouth as a funnel, an inverted funnel where you put the food and push it, the funnel takes it into the esophagus and down to the stomach. But this is a factory with grinding stones here. So when you look at this mechanism, very less we have used, very less. We are always in a hurry. Unless the food is hot, we don't eat it. But otherwise, you gulp it. The recent United Nations declaration of last year as the year of millets has attracted all our attention. And everybody started to buy a kilogram or so of millet and try to trouble the wife or whoever it is. And if he himself is cooking, others will trouble him. And it is important for us to realize, get millet, get a millet powder, add it to something, 1 or 2 spoons. It's not going to change your whole metabolism. And so I'm diabetic, let us say, and I will eat millet, and so my sugar will go down. But the question is, yesterday evening itself, we were discussing in a very informal discussion. To eat ragi, you require to be taught how to eat it. Because the fundamental way a farmer eats ragi is make the gelatinized balls of ragi, dip it in a curry or whatever it is, and then swallow it. He doesn't masticate it at all. If you masticate, the amylase in the mouth will act on ragi and it converts it into sugar right there. So your sugar level shoots up much faster. So here is a simple observation of farmer. That's because he has to swallow it because he swallows at morning 10 o'clock and he has to survive till 4 o'clock. So the slow release of sugar happens not at the peak when you swallow, but at the slow release. That gelatinized ragi or erucina, which really makes a difference in the sugar levels. For a healthy farmer, I'm talking. Okay. So we should learn, not that we are five-star cultures and therefore we don't have to learn. We just eat millet. Not possible. Each one has its own value, and we have to tap that value and the methodology of eating and the methodology of chewing and when to drink water is completely lost in the culture. And therefore, we need to re-innovate, reignite those food cultures back to square one. And not by just a WhatsApp message, eat that, eat this, and so on. And so you will be healthy and you don't have to go to your doctor. And therefore, you should be able to manage your diabetes yourself and so on. But we miss sometimes the structure of food. The other point I want to mention, the culture of food. The structure of food is very important. I give you an apple and it doesn't make that crunchy sound and the juice spills out of your mouth. You miss something, right? I give you an apple and it crunches like tomato. It may be the most fresh apple imported, but when the juice doesn't spill out to others, probably it is not an apple. So therefore, it's the structure that we look at food. So how much importance all this holistic approach has. And that structure should be crisp somewhere, juicy somewhere. The osmotic behavior of some of them is very important. And also I call it in my book on thermodynamics of food structure, there's a lot of entropy involved in that. And there's a lot of free energy that gets involved in that. And all that into an enthalpic reaction that takes place in the body. And this physiology, which is packed by what is called skin, opens up a pack of food and eats without much caring for all these food cultures. And where do we go? We invite problems because the body is not used to many of these things. Therefore, when we look at a holistic approach on the nutrition point, we also look at soil physics to social recharge. What is soil physics? Is there a structure there? Is there a clear Dalton's atomic theory there, which we can do? But I think in here is the microbiome in the gut and the microbiome in the soil and the microbiome on the plants that grows. This symbiosis between the three has to end up as an orchestral music. Otherwise, it won't gel. So therefore, to handle our 9 trillion organisms in the gut, you are not eating for yourself. You are eating for that population of 9 trillion. If you don't feed them, they will go on strike. You know, when they go on strike, what happens? You can't even sit for 45 minutes in this hall. They are very cooperative with us when we dump so many things through this funnel. And therefore, it's very important to respect them. And today, we are talking about gut-brain axis and so on. So therefore, the first reaction is not that of brain, but from the gut. Perhaps that's the reason we always say, my gut feeling is. So I represent that 9 trillion population. I, individual. So my 9 trillion army is here. So they feel that I should do this. Therefore, I have a gut feeling that I'm telling this. So therefore, this word gut feeling is just not did not come all of a sudden, but there is always a respect for that gut, which is not just one species. There are more than 10,000 species of bacterial culture in each, and each one of you have a signature like your thumb imprint. Each one of you. So if I do a DNA mapping of all the organisms that you have in your stomach, species I'm talking, not individual, I will get a different fingerprint for your gut than my gut and all of you. So maybe tomorrow that will be the ID card in the Aadhaar, that your gut microbiome will decide who you are, what was your genetic traits. And of course, these genes cannot be changed with very much in your life because you have inherited from your parents and you can't change your parents, luckily. And therefore, it's very, very vital that we must respect this gut and feed them what they need. And today we are talking about prebiotics, probiotics, and postbiotics. All the three are talked in the same wavelength. And very vital for us to look at fermented food in India, more than 2,500 fermented foods, which are so rich in probiotics and prebiotics. And, and they're a part of our food culture. But I don't see much of them existing. They're slowly vanishing. Along with this stripe, which touched the Remington typewriter all the way to iPhone, that generation will also go of knowledge of fermentation of food. And a different kind of fermentation that happens. And therefore, food engineering was a part of India's food culture, with vessels being used for a particular cooking pattern, which takes care of the iron deficiency all the way down to a silver small ladle, to a silver small kadai, in which you do the melting of butter to ghee, because silver ion gives that antioxidant effect. But we are not so rich as to have silver vessels, because we always say we're not born with a silver spoon. So where is kadai? Where is spoon? I'm not even born with a spoon. So therefore, vessels have food engineering background in this country and elsewhere, not only in India. But at the same time, metallurgy and chemistry of foods and its benefits are well documented in many, many treaties. And we are able to decipher many of them, but not able to understand the real significance of them. And that I learned from Dr. Ashok Vaidya, who originated all is from Rajkot basically. He's now in Mumbai, and a very, very famous person who linked Ayurveda with allopathy. And the way bhasma is made in Ayurveda, which is oxidation, and the imperialistic rule said it contains dangerous arsenic, contains mercury, so don't eat that. So unfortunately, very few did any work, and he continued that work with the committee. And Dr. Narendra Bhatt and others were there in that committee. And we sent a report to UK that this is not a contamination. These are in different form where they are not available to the body even to metabolize. But they are there at that micro quantity, at nano quantities, which are needed for taking care of many health issues, because it is required at much, much low level, lowest level possible, not by an elemental level. You can't measure it. Just like the richest sources of vitamin C, as all of you know, is amla, right? It's a common thinking. But when you estimate in the laboratory vitamin C from amla, you get zero vitamin C. You can never estimate vitamin C in amla. The best analytical chemists have tried. We also know the ascorbic acid is, before it oxidizes, the best it is for use. So you always cut your nimbu before you squeeze it. If you cut it and so it becomes oxidized. That ascorbic acid is not available freely in the system. That ascorbic acid in amla, which is the richest source, is bound to tannin, and that tannin keeps that safe. Whether you put in pickles or you fry it in chavanprash with ghee, only when it goes into your stomach at pH 2.2 with bile salts, it breaks that covalent bond, and the fresh ascorbic acid is available to you. What a great measurement that nature has made. Even if we misuse in pickles, hey man, it's available, don't worry. So it's very important. So therefore, when you estimate ascorbic acid in amla, you need to hydrolyze it. You need to break it the way stomach breaks. Then you get the richest source, gram to gram. So therefore, it's that statement is true, the richest source. But analytical chemists will make a war. I could never get it, they will say. So therefore, it's vital that the modern elements of science must look at the physiology and understand it. And we should use the modern tool to understand some of them rather than blame allopathy or blame a system of modern science and only stick to traditional knowledge. It's not possible. It has to be an integration. Otherwise, that investments that you are doing will kill that innovation. And therefore, in this tree eye, it is very important that it need to be integrated in a way it is useful to the system. I'd like to go to the more or less the last portion. When we look at all these systems, we also have to look at food and health and wellness when it comes to nutrition. And in that, there are a lot of diseases that the tropical country like India really has to struggle because the bacterial growth at 40 degrees is fantastic. It's very happy to grow. You don't require an incubator. Just put it outside and it grows. And therefore, the antibiotic resistance that comes in is really something that we have to worry. So we call it as an antibiotic for whatever is the infection, maybe a strep infection, a streptococci infection, or a fever, or a pathogenic bacteria that you got. But you take that antibiotic, maybe 500 milligrams for 5 days, 1 gram per day, 5 grams. Number one, what happens to your gut bacteria? They're gone, more or less. You have to reinvest. Where is your stock for that? Where do you draw that sample of your bacteria, your gut bacterial system of microbiota? You don't have a fixed deposit of them anywhere. You didn't deposit it. So you are getting into a new culture altogether after an antibiotic. But at the same time, the pathogens that attacked you got used to that antibiotic. And today, if I am admitted to a hospital with a lung infection, the doctor doesn't know what is the history of antibiotics you have taken. So he uses the first level, first generation antibiotic on you. Doesn't work. Second generation doesn't work because you already finished all the generation of antibiotics and the organism is resistant and pass away to heaven. And the blame goes to the hospital, blame goes to the doctor, and blame goes to the system. And then you blame allopathy. But that's not true because recklessly taking things, chemicals injection, be it be pesticide, be it be fungicide, be it be herbicide, be it be an antibiotic recommended or self-recommended to a pharmacist by you. And in fact, some of the pharmacists carry a bottle of water on the counter. You must be worrying why he's carrying a bottle of water on the counter. When you say, I want one antibiotic, he will give you, and you can take it there itself. So very different India, and maybe in many other countries, this is the practice. So therefore, doctors are baffled. Patients are praying God at the last moment. Nothing works. Death is imminent. We don't have even a record of what antibiotics we have taken throughout life. Anybody raise their hand if you have a record of all the antibiotics that has been ingested into you? We don't have a record. So therefore, not only you, but what you have done is the social system is contaminated. That microorganism that comes out of you, either as urine or excreta or as saliva, is a modified microorganism. You have modified to your tuning, your microbiota, and that AMR resistant and antimicrobial resistant system is a different than mine. The same infection has come to me, but the same antibiotic I take, both of us throw out into the social system a resistant bacteria or a microbial system, which is different. because I have produced a different resistance microorganism because my immunity is different. Your immunity is different. So therefore, we are dealing with variation. Today, these are very, very baffling questions, and more money needs to go into that to make sure that these are not resistant. And imagine poor plants about pesticide and so on. Therefore, food medicine, Ayurveda, and traditional medicine in perspective with modern scientific tools have opened up new vistas for us to understand. And therefore, I always say Ayush is a great acronym for Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, Siddha, and Homeo. But you need to add another A there, which is allopathy and modern tools. If that is not there, you are not integrating things because you are isolating. Yes, I will do everything the way it required, but at the end, you are to have a system that needs to be both on the lifestyle changes as well as the sustainable one from the younger days. And not that when I am 65, 70, when I have free time, now I will go to gym and now I will make everything right. I'll correct all the mistakes I have done. Too late. Too late. So the lifestyle that one has to perform from the beginning all the way to the end has to be very different. And that lifestyle has to be very well organized. In that, I would like to mention that the biology, chemistry, and physics of food has shown us the way about personalized foods. Why I'm talking about personalized food is that has something to do with nutrition and health. It is what is personalized food? Personalized medicine is what suits you. The doctor knows, the doctor prescribes. But personalized food is inscribed by you, prescribed by you, and you eat it. Why? You like the taste. That's all. Since you have been fed in your house, you like something that your mother, wife, mother in law, whoever cooks, or father in law, ultimately you are tuned to that system and you get it, you call it personalized food. But nah, that's not the case. Personalized food is what your physiology requires. Please remember that. So sometimes whole life we have been eating, we have not personalized our food. So if I ask how many of you have personalized food, including me, I can't raise my hand. Because I've been eating food, whatever is served to me. But perhaps my physiology requires a food that is different to be perfectly performing mentally, physically, physiologically, and spiritually. Therefore, it is vital that we define that point of personalized food at an young age. Today morning, I was talking to the LMCP college student. I said, this is the time you should start doing personalized food, not at my age. Too late. You have to really start now. Not that I will eat pizza and so on, but you also require a break. You have too much overloading your system with rigorous imprisonment, the system will revolt. So once in a week, break all the rules, eat whatever you want, eat whatever is served to you, don't make too much complaints, let the plate be colorful. So therefore, personalized food is an agenda, both for pediatrics and geriatrics, and also the adolescents. And so the journey of pediatrics to geriatrics through personalized food is a much more healthy lifestyle food. And rather than a food that is ordered online and eaten by somebody else, is not your food sometimes. But you need to bargain and moderate. And in Sanskrit, we have a saying of mita, that is moderation of everything. You don't want to go to extremities of so many things. You can't live in life, right? You need a moderation. And that moderation comes into integrating and converging the funnel of knowledge through many systems of AI, IoT, and machine learning, and etc. I don't want to talk about that too much because all of you know. But at the same time, food needs to be enjoyed. It's very important. Why I'm focusing on food is because that's one of the sustainable management that we have. So therefore, when we look at gratefulness of who does the food, in the morning, your own former colleague Anil Gupta had a breakfast with me in the hotel, and we had a long chat. I was telling him this one point: whatever food is served to you, It's not the microwave that does, it's not the hotel that does. But even a food that was not tasty, when your mother served you when you were young, you didn't complain too much till you realize your taste buds are different. You ate something else. So, therefore, a food served with affection, love, and devotion. When I say devotion, not only to God, but devotion to food, care for it, and so on. And that makes a lot of difference in its palatability and in its consumption, in its releasing the molecule. But just eating food is not enough. You need to burn it till the next meal, before the next meal, where you get all individual molecular benefits. Otherwise, you are filling up the tube and the tube empties on the other end. Not much benefit you will get. Not much benefit you will get. So you need to burn it in a way appropriate to the age. I don't want all of you to run 5 kilometers, but those who can do exercise and burn it, not only for calories burning, but also for releasing those molecules. Food is beyond proteins, fat, carbohydrates, vitamins, and minerals. There are so many nutrients. An apple contains 400 molecules minimum. So you're not eating apple for the vitamins and minerals because there's not much protein in apple. There's no fat, a little bit carbohydrate. So you're not eating that for that. These molecules, nutraceuticals, which I also term it as Ayurveda's ayursuticals, which is an Indian word. And it's very important. All these have to be combined to make sure that that food is safe. Without food safety, I get a question mark. Wherever you eat, your first question is it ready to be eaten with safety? I'm traveling tomorrow, I don't want to eat this food. There is this scare. But at home, there is always a freshness to that. So therefore, whether it is pesticide, fungicide, or the herbicide contamination, but beyond that, the microbial contamination which grows up, and perhaps a little bit of contamination of microbes, not pathogen, is better for some of the food because that produces vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 cannot be synthesized in the body, it has to be given by microbes. So a little bit contamination, not of pathogen, is so important, including the yogurt that we eat, will provide us vitamin B12, which is so important. When we look at modern food and cell biology, we have lab meat today, lab proteins today, coming into cell biology and taking over and say, hey, its carbon footprint is less. But when you look at all this raw food converted to primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary processing, you are looked at highly processed food called ultra processed food, superfood. These are labels. These are labels. Never ever look at them from an angle of super duper. So you can label anything for marketing. So therefore, that investment of whether pharmaceuticals or foodaceuticals, herbaceuticals, nutraceuticals, ayursuticals, homeoceuticals, all the way to oleoceuticals and even zooceuticals, have all shown the way that you just cannot escape that whole plethora of what is given to us with a food compatibility, and not individual food, sometimes a combination of food that goes into our plate. And never ever one single grain food is eaten by anybody in this country or anywhere else. There's always a combination of food, this with that with this, and that has come by tradition. You can change it. You can eat your dosa with ketchup. You can eat your idli. Of course, idli is not from India. Idli is from Malaysia. It took 200 years to travel to India and come down, settled in India. And therefore, it is important for us to look at combination. Combination not for taste, but combination for a digestibility coefficient, combination of generation to generation of knowledge transfer, all the way. I would like to top up my talk with the feeling that these innovations that have happened in food science and food technology over the last 6,000 years is well documented. But at the same time, the modern system of wasting food has been a syndrome for us. It's so important that we are okay today in India, but When you look at my book on food losses and waste to FAO, I have attributed the maximum loss is in Western countries. Why? At 12 o'clock in the night, a huge set of food is pushed into a carrier because it is expiry date is over. At 12:01, if I eat the same vegetable, I will not die. But at 12, the date is over. So it is thrown back into the system. So therefore, we need to really look at regulatory from a different angle altogether. But safety is very important. But at the same time, we need what we call best before use. We start printing everywhere. But that doesn't mean you eat old food or contaminated food. But we need a lot more system to analyze the whole system in a very big capacity building. Therefore, it is also vital, many times we label food as junk food. Potato, fries, chips, junk food. Potato is poor guy. He's a very good food. You have converted your diet into junk, and don't blame junk food. No food is junk. And no food can ever be non-functional. Don't call it a functional food. And that is not functional. Which food is not functional? Tell me. So functional food and junk food are wrong labels that goes into wrong investment many times. And the integrated approach of the full, plethora of army of knowledge is not being put. So therefore, when we look at all this, the food epidemiology, all the way down to reverse epidemiology of food and the reverse pharmacodynamics of food, and food be thy medicine, has to require a constant innovation day to day to minimize the use of it, what is required to us in the most traditional way, but in the most minimum wastage that is put with an integrated knowledge of spices adding to it, all the way down to using it for better purposes day by day. But at the same time, we also have taboos that we need to remember in any country, not only in India. It's always there's a taboo on certain foods. And therefore, we need to respect that because that came from generation to generation. That didn't come because somebody didn't like. A particular tribe failed to do something after eating that. So therefore, there's a taboo on that. So just like the Kesri dal in the central part of Madhya Pradesh, which had a problem of a certain neurological disease, was found to be okay by the tribe till the modern science came and said Kesri dal causes this. Why? You cook Kesri dal in pressure cooker. But the tribals cook that for 12 times in boiling water and throw that water and use it. So you miss the tradition. You put the pressure cooker there. All that, the ingredient that is responsible for that for neurological disease is still in the pressure cooker along with that. That cannot be destroyed. It is not heat labile, it is heat stable. So the old method of boiling and throwing is fantastic. So what we do is impinge the modern science and traditional knowledge and try to confuse the system and then try to solve it and say we'll give you subsidy, so don't grow that, grow this. He has no choice. In his soil, Kesri dal only grows. The normal tur dal doesn't grow there because the microbiota of that soil is different, the weather is different, it's a water arid zone. So therefore, it is very vital. With that, I would say climate change is hitting us. It will affect our innovations, it will affect our investments, it will affect our nutrition. And on December 6th at Montreal, when I gave a keynote address on the climate change and food and sustainability, it's very important for us to remember that you can blame everything on climate change. SDG has also defined that 17. But I would also say every paisa saved is a paisa earned, right? That we know. From today, a small decision you have to take. That's a penalty you pay for hearing my talk. That's my 18th agenda on the sustainable development goals. At any time, anywhere, your plate has to be empty after you eat. And your family, your friends. You may lose a friend, but do comment that you have no right to throw it. You have no right because you have not grown it. You cannot throw. Whoever it is, doesn't matter. So it's important for us to have not waste the food, not waste the food, and just use, cook whatever you need. And a small shortage may be there on the dining table. I think you'll sleep well. Rather than an overfilled tummy, which disturbs your underfilled tummy, will put you to sleep faster. So therefore, waste of food is a crime. So therefore, the 18th agenda should have been prevent food and losses and waste. But somehow we need to follow that. And I hope India will have a policy on that and make sure that that is something that we show respect to the farmer for what he grows. And not feeding many families in Gujarat itself, I'm talking, not only in other states, much worse. The milk is sold and not given to the children in that family because milk gives you the economy of money and the children cannot drink it because if they drink, then you can't sell it. So small cows yielding small amount of milk deprived the children of the milk because it's an economic incentive that you get. It's a trading. So therefore, with all these problems, I think we need to learn how to conserve water, how to make lesser carbon footprint, and at the same time use the local food for a global economy and be powerful locally. And if I recall the Nature paper, that's where the power of science is. That's where the power of our humanity, and not only the idea of wastage has to be propagated properly, but at the same time, there must be compassion to that food which is grown by the farmer. He is giving you at your mercy, at his, you are under his mercy. If he decides not to give you, how many of you can grow your own rice, own tur dal, your own cow, you put it in the house? We are paralyzed. We are paralyzed. So it's a great service that he is doing or she is doing by giving it to us. Even for love of money, during COVID time, you're scared whether I'll get tomorrow's ration. Long queues in supermarket, right? But India have sustained that with the cottage industry, women-driven industry, village industries, and small-scale industries. So therefore, investments have to go into those sectors and rather than huge sectors, which of course will always be there. And that integration of cottage, village, small-scale women industries with larger industries and also the global industry is very vital for a sustainable food, nutrition, and health program. And that health has to be also sustainable. But we can't fight age and we have to depart at the age of 100. But if we depart earlier than that, something is wrong in our lifestyle. So we have a lot of blue zones in the world. There are 5 blue zones which we quote. But India itself has better blue zone. And we have never made that a rule to do that. And one of the blue zones is, please visit the midday meal program that Government of India runs today. And it is running from 1990, basically. A long program of feeding 15 crore children with 80 different menus. And I'm always happy that work was done without a project. So even today, audit can catch me and say, hey, you wasted the country's money. No project, no approval. But what is important is that compassion to children who go to food empty stomach. For 16 hours, they have no food. Today, at least in government schools, there is a lot of happiness. And most of the meetings that I held on midday meals were in the schools. And we ate after the children ate with the leftovers. If nothing is left, there is no lunch for that meeting. Sorry. So these are some of the things that I wanted to share with you, with the happiness that India is self-reliant on food. And that doesn't mean we can throw food. We can waste food. So therefore, with that, I thanks once again. I thank you very much for the AMA and special thanks to Mr. Dangach and to Mr. Sarabhai and to also to Dikshit for involving me. And more importantly, thank you for coming in the evening and spending some time to enrich this hall with energy and knowledge. And I look forward for discussion for the rest of the time, which is not much. I took more than what it is. I found nobody went to sleep, I can guarantee you. So therefore, I took the liberty of talking a little bit more. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Prakash. As usual, you are scintillating and you covered the entire gamut of issues that surround this entire topic. My question is with regard to this recent trend for vegan food, where people say milk causes cancer because of the IGF, the particular hormone which is there, and you need to go to plant-based milk as compared to regular milk. And there are various other dimensions. What's your views on science from scientific point of view on milk and vegan food?
I want to quote two examples here to show you. There was a time in 1990 when India was having ban on monosodium glutamate, which is allowed in food maximum 1%. And the agenda was why maximum 1%? What's wrong with that? So similarly, everything else. So is that audible? Yeah. So therefore, it is vital for us to remember. And we had a small out of the institute discussion I had, because I couldn't have it in the institute because that was a government regulation, and so we can't go against it. But I've built up an argument to beat that. Monosodium glutamate is added for as a flavoring agent for many of the Chinese cooking and the Oriental cooking. Which is the richest source of glutamate? Richest source of glutamate, many people thought, was tomato, mushroom, which makes you addict to certain foods because of its concentration. Like you keep on adding too much salt to your food, your threshold will increase, right? Similarly, but we found a very different approach from doctors who addressed us, and they said the highest amount per ml or per gram of food of monosodium glutamate is mother's milk. Now, the baby will die, baby won't die. So therefore, some of these myths that have been circulating has to be looked at with a clarity of purpose for what it is. Sometimes it is to kill the market. Sometimes it is just like the A1, A2 milk, which people bought at 500 rupees. And finally, it was clearly shown by India that A1, A2 has no big deal. In fact, if that was so, none of the Indians would have been alive today. They were all, and we always say India is the capital of diabetes. Come on, we have 9% of diabetics, whereas US has 11% diabetics. Our number has to be more because 1.4 billion. Maximum number of girls in the world in one country. Maximum number of buses, maximum number of trains who are traveling in trains. Everything is number one because of population. So calling us as capital of diabetes is a crime. And anybody who does that, please do show the statistics very clearly. That's very bad. And therefore, this kind of thinking process has to change by scientists to be more vocal, more involved in society, and talk more to school children because they are the tomorrow's one. So I wouldn't agree that these cause us problems. And again, a vegan would argue in a different way. But these will continue. But milk has never killed anybody. That much sure. Unless it is contaminated, it has never killed anybody. So I would say it's fine. But anything in excess has a problem. Okay. But those who are lactose intolerant have to be careful. Just like celiac disease, where people are very, very allergic to wheat protein, which many of us don't even know we are allergic at the age of 65. I told you yesterday, one nutritionist, realized he's allergic to curds. Too late to decide. So that's where personalized food and so on comes. But to make it short, uh, it has to be safe. That's all. As long it is microbial contamination is not there, and our habit in India is whatever is remaining milk in the night, please put a drop of curds and convert it into curds. And that's your probiotic storage, fixed deposit mutual fund for next day. Yeah. So that's very important. That's what I say. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's better to use the mic. Can we? You can come in the front. I would like to see you. Yeah, yeah.
Dr. Saab, first of all, we are very thankful to you. Kindly give us simple breakfast, lunch, and dinner menu to keep fitness like you at this age, so we can improve our health, which is at level very poor.
It's a very
And we are
difficult.
Gujarati, take not non-veg.
You know, my feeling is a very difficult question for a simple man for me to answer that. You have asked a question which, whatever God gives you, eat it. That's very important. First of all. Secondly, jokes apart, it's very important. Don't eat a lunch if you are not hungry. Burn the breakfast, eat the lunch. If you still want to eat the lunch, but don't eat any time if you're not hungry. If you do that formula, perhaps a large amount of wastage of food is prevented, but at the same time, have a colorful plate. Is a very important one. The more color on the plate, the more better. Avoid totally at your age. I'm talking about your age because you said, and salt is a chemical, sugar is a chemical, and oil is not natural. So if you minimize these two, you can't avoid it because, but those of you who have avoided sugar, you know that you can live without sugar, right? Salt, if your WHO has put 5 grams limit per salt per day. From your food, what you will get indirect salt without adding, when you do a spinach curry, you will get almost to the core of 3 grams from indirect sources. So what you are left with is 2 grams of salt. If you really want to add, if you don't want to add, that's fine. So therefore, if you can avoid these 3 or minimize it, have a colorful plate and eat only when you are hungry. Hungry means not you felt hungry, but you really have to have pangs of hunger. I don't want you to go into hypoglycemia, but it's very important for us. So with that, I think, but you have inherited a lot of genetic diseases from your grandfather, grandmother, great grandfather, so that you can't change. That you can't change, and it could be a congenital, disease. So you need to handle that in the proper way. So accordingly, you can adjust your personalized food for the way you can do it. So I would say very, very moderately, I would say.
Let's take one last question.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir. I'm going to ask you 3
Can you
questions.
put the mic close to your mouth?
Can you hear me now? Okay. I'm sorry, he asked me to have 1 question, but I have 3 questions. Please don't mind my questions.
Let us answer one by one.
Okay. So when you say Dr. V. Prakash, PhD, and FRSC, so you FRSC would be what?
He's a fellow of the Royal Society of Chemistry.
Fellow of Royal Society of Chemistry, right? Now, as a Dr. V. Prakash, when he is doing a management of food, nutrition, and health,
You have to be louder.
when you are doing a sustainable management for food, you speak about the food management, the soil, you talk about saving the food, not wasting the food. Where are we going into this? When we say sustainable, when your topic of discussion is this, are we somewhere connected with government where it regulates a FSI? Are we somewhere connected where we are going to come with some innovations? Are we connected with something which would make some changes through this particular model? Are we connected somewhere? I like to understand that. You are a former director of CFTRI. Can you give me the full form of CFTRI? No, no, I understand, sir. There is a reason for asking this question. There is a reason for asking this question. Please understand.
Yeah.
I had given you something over there. So please don't mind it. I had come only because of a request. So I like to understand that there is a reason for this.
Can we please, we can, I think you will, that is not the right question for this
Sir,
forum.
I am asking you that's the
Please,
reason.
we can talk about that later. That is not, you can write to the AMA website and we can answer, but that's not, we have to respect the
Why-
time here, sir, please. So anyway, on behalf of AMA, I extend my heartfelt gratitude for all of you who have come. This was a remarkable talk on sustainable management of food, nutrition, and health, delivered under the Symphony AMA Center for Innovation and the Nirubhai Desai Center for Climate Change. Dr. Prakash, that was just my really incredible speech. One of the first things I realized that I was having Ragi all wrong. So I was more in between. I lost my concentration because I realized that that most of the millets, and I think that might be for many people here. So if there was a book or something, information, that would be great. But really, our deepest appreciation to Dr. Prakash, a distinguished scientist in our country who effectively covered really your global experiences. And we really learned a lot about how to combat undernutrition, enhance food safety, and really the core values recently about blood sugar and everything else. It was really wonderful to listen to you, and also gratitude to Mr. Dangravich, AMA Executive Board Member. Thank you for bringing and organizing this. So I know we respect time always in AMA, so on behalf of everyone, thank you. A round of applause for everyone included. Thank you very much.